This process is undemocratic. It's actually, some would say, un-American, because right now, people in Congress have until 3:00 on today, as we speak, in about an hour, to introduce any legislation that they would want to introduce. And then council decides if they're going to say yes, no, and if it's going to go. But one of the things that is really wrong, one, it's not translated into Spanish, so many Puerto Ricans cannot understand it. Mm-hmm. Two, it is tilted and stacked towards statehood.
No taxation without representation, right? After fighting against British colonialism for this exact principle, the U.S. is now imposing the same injustice on the people of Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Ricans have a choice to make. I'm Yasmin Khan with Rebel HQ, and it's a battle for sovereignty, a battle the people of Puerto Rico know all too well by now. Having gone from a Spanish colony to a U.S. territory over 120 years ago, Puerto Rico has not had the privilege of self-governance in a long time. It's a story of American imperialism and colonialism, a story that we don't hear much about in American media. It's one that is often glossed over in favor of stories around, say, American exceptionalism. But for a territory that is trying to maintain its cultural identity while attempting to govern itself within the parameters that a foreign government has imposed upon it, the Puerto Rican people are tired of their voices being silenced.
But now, the Democratic Congress that we would think would be open for all options to be on the table at the same time with equal value is stacking the deck towards statehood.
First of all, I'll give you a brief history of affairs because I think it helps to put everything into context. But we're actually going to start with Hawaii. In the 1700s, white Europeans discovered the Hawaiian Islands and began to colonize them. By the end of the 1800s, a US-backed coup deposed the Queen, and the islands were annexed by the US. As a territory, Hawaii's first governor was the sugar magnate and prominent coup plotter Sanford Dole. Dole as in the Dole Fruit Company, same guy. Americans love to coup for fruit. Now, at around the same time, the U.S. was engaged in the Spanish-American War, a quick and one-sided war that started when the U.S. decided to back Cuban nationalists who were seeking independence from Spanish rule. By December 1898, the Spanish had lost the war and ceded several of its territories to the U.S., including the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. The war ended Spanish colonial rule in the Americas. And at that point, Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory, but it wasn't able to allow its own governor. The U.S. appointed one. Then in 1917, just before the U.S. entered World War I, all Puerto Rican citizens were made American citizens. The Puerto Ricans didn't have a say in this, but it was done so that the U.S. could draft them into the war. Jump forward now 30 years, and Puerto Rico finally gets the right to elect its own governors. But just prior to that happening, all talk of Puerto Rican independence had been stifled by the American government, upsetting local revolutionaries and nationalists. Subsequent protests were shut down, and in 1952, Puerto Rico became a Commonwealth. So let's jump way forward now to the 2010s. Puerto Ricans are American citizens that pay taxes to the United States, but they still don't have any representation in our federal government. The question that is now being posed to the Puerto Rican people is how they wish to proceed regarding their relationship with the U.S., and they have a few options available to them. The first one is statehood, which would mean they would be admitted to the United States as the 51st state, and the people would finally get representation in Congress. The GOP isn't a fan of this option because they're worried about admitting a new state that would likely vote for the Democrats. You can't blame the Puerto Ricans for not liking the Republican Party much either, especially after the now infamous moment when Trump literally tossed hurricane relief at them following Hurricane Maria. Maria did a number not just on the infrastructure and economy of Puerto Rico, but on its people. The hurricane inflicted an estimated $90 billion in damage to the island, making it the third costliest hurricane to hit the United States, not to mention it killed nearly 3,000 people, making it the deadliest U.S. natural disaster in a century. The Trump administration, for its part, failed to deliver any meaningful funds or solutions to the island. Many who lived through that don't have a lot of confidence in the United States government to take care of them, which would have been one of the bigger reasons to favor statehood. Opponents of the statehood option also believe that statehood would just be another form of colonialism. It'd be a victory for the colonizer instead of the colonized, and a way for the U.S. to justify its occupation of the island and its claims on the people. Opponents also worry that, like what happened in Hawaii, the local culture would be largely erased, gentrified, and Americanized. Now, the second option would be to preserve the status quo, which is to keep Puerto Rico as a Commonwealth. This seems to be a tolerable medium between the more extreme ends of the spectrum, which would be statehood or independence. Puerto Rico still wouldn't have congressional representation, but it would at least still get to govern itself somewhat. Somewhat is key. Puerto Rican governments still have to comply with U.S. federal laws and mandates, which again, the Puerto Rican people don't have any democratic say in. Also, this seems to be a less popular option for Puerto Ricans, particularly after 2016, when the U.S. created an elected board that had the authority to commandeer Puerto Rico's local branches of government in the name of fiscal protections. On the recently introduced status bill, this option was not included. The third option, free association, means that Puerto Rico would become a sovereign state that still has close ties to the U.S. Puerto Rico would be able to manage its own foreign affairs, but the U.S. would still assist in defense. Puerto Rico would still get funding from U.S. federal agencies like the NOAA and the EPA, but the Supreme Court just gutted the EPA, so that might be a less attractive draw now. Also, the Puerto Rican people would lose their American citizenship if they gained free association, and with that, they'd also lose their access to things like Medicare and Social Security. And the fourth option is the big one, independence. For any colony to become independent is a difficult task. The question of self-governance comes up, of course, but Puerto Rico already has the infrastructure there, so it might not be the most difficult transition ever. While this option seems to be an increasingly popular one amongst the Puerto Rican people, the U.S. obviously doesn't like it as much. And so, the plight of the nationalists is underreported in U.S. media, and the Puerto Rican people are constantly being misled on the matter by the U.S. government. For instance, Puerto Ricans voted for statehood for the first time in a 2012 referendum, but many people boycotted that vote and subsequent ones because they felt independence wasn't being represented or discussed as an equal viable option. Today, that struggle is still a struggle. On July 15, 2022, the House introduced the status bill that would allow the people of Puerto Rico to vote on the future of their island. Should the bill pass, Puerto Ricans will be able to choose independence, statehood, or free association with the United States. The bill has passed in committee, but it's still a few steps away from adoption. And that's where we are. It'll probably be a few months before this all wraps up, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Thank you so much for watching this. Please like the video if you like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you want more from me and my other fellow Rebel HQ contributors, and also follow me over on Instagram and TikTok.